Everyone would love to believe that we all have some sort of guardian angel or higher spirit that is thought to watch over and protect us throughout our life. The following 4 stories are about lives that were saved by an inexplicable force or spirit that physically saved them or forewarned them. Charles Henry Durand, New Jersey. In the early 1900s, a farmer from New Jersey by the name of Charles Henry Durand was riding home in his horse and cart when his horse, for no reason, suddenly stopped in the road. As Charles was sitting contemplating his next move, a ghostly white spectre appeared in front of him, and Charles could clearly see that it was his deceased wife. As Henry and his horse were now frozen in fear, his wife drew closer and whispered to Henry, "There is danger at home. Stay away till morning." Now even more terrified after his wife's apparition not only approached him but actually spoke to him, Henry Durand thought it best that he heed his wife's warnings and decided to wait until morning. After a few hours, Henry decided it was safe to make his way home. By the time he arrived back at his property, it was daylight. As Henry approached his house, he noticed that a few things did not look right, such as the window being open, and on further inspection found muddy footprints all over the floor. Still apprehensive and alert, he then noticed that string had been stretched across his bedroom door, and instead of pulling the string, stood back and touched the string with his umbrella, and in an instant had heard a gunshot. He found that the string had been booby-trapped, where it had been attached to the trigger mechanism, and if he'd walked through to his bedroom in the dark, he would surely have been shot. If his deceased wife had not warned him on the road the previous night, Henry would have been caught in the trap and lost his life. Christine Scubish, California. On June 6, 1994, Christine Scubish and her 3-year-old son left the home in Sacramento, California, with the intention of starting a new life. As she was driving along Highway 50, Christine fell asleep at the wheel of the car, where it crashed 40 feet down an embankment, and Christine tragically lost her life. Her son Nick was also injured and was in a serious condition. Unfortunately, because the car had left the road, it now lay hidden down an embankment. Other drivers would have been unaware that there'd been a serious accident. 4 days later, on June 10th, Deborah Hoyt from Sacramento awoke early in the morning and for some inexplicable reason felt a strong urge to leave immediately. As Deborah and her husband were driving along Highway 50, they saw a young woman lying on the side of the road and immediately called the police, where officers from El Dorado County Police quickly attended but found no sign of the young woman. A short time later, El Dorado County Police were then informed of the disappearance of Christine Scubish and her son, where Deputy Rich Strasser then returned to the site that Hoyt claimed to have seen the young woman lying on the road. After a close examination, Deputy Strasser discovered a shoe belonging to a child, and on further inspection managed to locate the damaged vehicle down the embankment. After more than 4 days, he found a starving young boy in a critical condition, but alive. Under extreme conditions, young Nick had managed to survive against all odds. When Christine Scubish's family heard that somebody had seen the body of a young woman lying on the road, yet her body was still in the vehicle, they strongly believed that Deborah's spirit was sending a message to other drivers that her son was still alive and needed to be rescued before she was able to move on. Ralph Earnhardt Jr., California. Ralph Dale Earnhardt Jr., 46, is an American professional stock car racing driver and competes part-time in NASCAR racing. It was during a practice session for an American Le Mans Series race at the Sonoma Raceway in California in 2004 where Ralph Earnhardt was driving his vehicle when it was hit by another car and exploded into flames, and Earnhardt was badly burned in the accident. But for Earnhardt, this was no ordinary accident, and claimed that something very unusual happened to him whilst he was sitting in the burning vehicle, and that it had help from something or someone from beyond. Before the fiery incident, Earnhardt asserted that he'd never seen or felt a ghost in his life before the incident in 2004, when his Corvette was wrecked and then caught fire, but somebody pulled him out of the vehicle. He initially thought it was a corner worker because he could feel the hands under his armpits and pull him out of the car, and swore he did not get out by himself and had no memory of climbing out by himself. After the collision, Earnhardt remembers leaning forward and trying to climb out of the vehicle, and then something grabbed him under his armpits and then pulled him over the door bars and then let go of him, where he fell to the ground. When Ralph Earnhardt got to the hospital, he screamed to his PR man, telling him to find the guy that pulled him out of the car, as he wanted to thank him for saving his life, but was told that nobody had pulled him out of the car. But Earnhardt insisted that he felt their physical hands grabbing him and pulling him to safety. In a later interview with 60 Minutes, he claimed that he sensed that his father, Dale Earnhardt, who died in 2001 race, must have had a lot to do with him getting out of that car, from the moment he tried to unbuckle his belt to laying on the stretcher, as he had no idea what happened or how he got out. After experiencing the strange paranormal incident, Earnhardt then believed that we were much more than just blood vessels, bone and muscle, and was certain he received help from beyond. Jane Reynolds, Shropshire, UK. On Christmas Eve 2016, Jane Reynolds from Shropshire in the West Midlands of England claimed that before going to bed that night, sensed something strange, but ignored the feeling and climbed into bed. At 4 a.m. on Christmas morning, she said that an unknown force suddenly ripped her blankets off of her bed and started to shake her. And after barely coming to terms with that ordeal, Jane then heard banging and screaming coming from somewhere in the house. Fearing that her sons may be in danger, she quickly ran to check on them, where she found her older child Ethan safely asleep, but to her horror, 18-month-old George was slowly choking. She immediately turned him over and gently patted him on the back to clear his airways. After the initial shock, she suddenly remembered her blankets being ripped off the bed and being shook, followed by someone screaming in the house. Something or someone must have warned her, as her older son was fast asleep while the other was choking. So who was screaming? The only possible explanation was that 50 years ago, a family that lived in the house had lost their baby, and someone did not want the same thing to happen and had warned her. Other than that, Jane had no idea who could have warned her.